Alrighty, sorry for the slow start there on Zoom. Meeting now on the Sustainability Committee, and we'll just jump right into it. So the first item on the agenda is updates to the fire station building, public safety building on the Elks property. Just last night, the council voted to get into an agreement with Mitchell Razor on doing a site analysis. This will give us an idea of the viability of the site before obviously we make any larger recommendation for funds such as purchasing the property. It's going to do a bit of a, I don't know if soil is the right word, but I guess wetland survey and things like that to give us an idea of where the wet spots are. He did come out earlier this week and walked the site and felt that just by first appearances, there really wouldn't be any issue with water in the area that we're looking at. So he's going to put together the rest of the proposal for us and start conducting the work next week. We should be getting that probably within a few weeks. It's not a ton of time. Any comment on that or discussion? Already. Next, water quality issues. So I finally got in touch with the right person. The state basically is not terribly involved with water quality testing. The department that deals with these kinds of water issues basically just oversees and makes sure that the proper testing is being done on a consistent basis. So we would basically have to look at specific sources that we would want to test and send it to a lab. And obviously after last night's meeting, some people have feelings about water quality that might be more to do with their pipes and or even their part of town maybe. So we'd probably want to talk as a committee on how we'd want to approach testing. I think probably water coming out of the source directly is fine. How it's dispersed through town or into homes, I think is where it becomes tricky to say that, you know, if we get a sample from one place that it's, you know, basically applies to the whole town. I don't think that's accurate. So any thoughts on water quality testing?
So you go ahead and take multiple tests. You go to neighborhoods, get a test sample, and I would suggest asking the University of Maine to do the analysis. I think last night's presentation was exactly right. I think the water quality coming out of the treatment plant itself is fine, but some places in here you may have piping that is 75 or 100 years old in some of these homes and the quality problem may not be with the water company or the source water from Ferguson Pond, but it may just be the fact that their piping coming from the street or in their home may be the problem. So I would say get random homes in several different areas, in different spots, and see if the University of Maine see how the different samples test out for the quality of the water.
Thoughts?
Could we request that Maine Water gives a presentation on what kind of testing they do or what kind of testing they have an exemption to do in town? That way we know what we're actually testing for. Do any kind of sampling throughout the neighborhoods.
Could you move the mic closer to the middle of the table?
No, we can't.
We'll just talk louder, Louise.
Sorry.
I was asking if we could invite Maine Water to give a presentation on what kind of testing they do and what kind of testing they don't do.
But they don't test past treatment plant.
Yeah, but that would give a clearer picture of what we should be testing for, or that would rule out what is coming from them and what's coming from the pipes. I think if people have, from the meeting last night, people have a lot of feelings about the quality that they're providing, but this would give a clearer picture of what they are providing versus what the pipes or faulty pipes people have in their homes. I think. And I think it's more personal than saying, oh, you call this 1-800 number, which is what their suggestion was last night.
Yeah, I mean, if we're looking at testing in different parts of town, we can certainly contact those who have already voiced their concerns specifically. And if we do work with the University of Maine, we could ask them to analyze it and ask them, do you think this is coming from old pipes within a home versus from the water source itself? Get probably a little bit more insight on that.
Well, like I say, you can more zero in on where the problem is. If you get sampling from your home in the development as compared to, say, a home across the tracks or in Little Italy or out in the Pines, and check those samples, compare them to each other, see where, if there's a discrepancy or a broad, there's differences in the water quality going through, then you can better understand where and why, and you start zeroing in on, is it a pipe problem? Because obviously, it would be better off than to go ahead and just try to assume that it's all the water company. I just think it would give the town a better idea of where people may be coming from. You may find that homes across the tracks that have the older piping or whatever, it's in a lot of the homes, may be a problem there. Whereas, say, in the development or out in Kelly Lane or whatever, it may not. Still the same water coming from the treatment plant, but the results may be different.
I guess, what's the ultimate goal? I mean, they test the water that comes out of the plant. They don't test it beyond the plant. So if it's coming to my house and we test that water and it doesn't test good, what's the alternative then? Then you get back to where the homeowner is going to have to step up and do something with piping.
But I think the homeowner is complaining that they're paying X amount of dollars for water coming into the thing, and they feel that the quality of the water isn't good. And so they're angry at the water company, where it could very well be that it is their problem, not the water company. And, it just gets into certain things where, like, it seems to me that people get angry, well, you're getting a rate. I'm not in favor of the rate increase, for one thing, but you're getting a rate increase and my water smells. Okay, that seems to be the part of the gist last night. You're getting a rate increase and my water smells. Well, let's find out if it's your water coming into your house or if it's everybody's water. And if it is, then there's nothing you can, then it's up to the homeowner to do something about it. You can't, it's not the water company then.
Right, but I just don't want, excuse me, I just don't want to get into a place where the town says, okay, we'll come in and test the water in your house. Okay, we're gonna test around, and we find an area that the water is bad, then we come back and say, okay, now the town's gonna fix that. I just want people to be aware that, that's not the town's responsibility.
Mhm.
Now, those are just my thoughts.
We have town property in different parts of town, of the town. Can we test water at our own properties instead of?
You do realize that before the plant was built, that secretly, back in about 1982, some residents took it upon themselves to take samples from tap water around the community and send it away to have it analyzed from a private agency. And it came back, and that was one of the big reasons that the new plant was built. That was why they put that new treatment plant out there, was because they had gotten such a terrible, I mean, it literally, you would leave a glass of water in your sink overnight and you could see the brown on the bottom in the morning before the treatment plant was put in. But that's what they did, and that was money was given and her crew took samples, got them sent away, didn't say where they were from. Just sent in to get them analyzed, came back and said, the water is no good. And it was presented and they had to put up or shut up.
Well, I think to address what both of you said, I think if we're clear about why we're testing and what the purpose is, basically, to make sure that, first of all, that we identify the issue, because it could be water source, it could be the house's piping itself, or it could be everything in between. That neighborhood itself could have very old piping by main water, and we'd be able to narrow that down. I know one of the people that spoke last night claimed that they have all new piping, yet they still have all these problems. So maybe if we're looking at neighborhoods, we'd want to do a mixture of new piping, old piping, just to see what the difference really is there. Probably get a map from main water, to your point, of having them present, understanding what they've upgraded, what they've not upgraded, how the water flows through, so we can get more accurate readings there. But to your point of testing the town's property water, I think the purpose obviously is to see, because the water that's being used through the homes are being used pretty consistently. And so I think to give an accurate reading there as well, we should probably do home water as opposed to town water, which might not be used as much, and might not accurately depict what people in that neighborhood are using.
Well, then I would say that the messaging around it needs to be very detailed. And,
Can I chime in here?
Yeah,
yeah,
please do.
we also have a couple of comments in the chat from Susan Dallas.
Yeah. Listen, just to separate this homeowner liability versus town, why wouldn't we check neighborhoods through the fire hydrants for water? It's got to be the same lines that feed your home.
It's a different line, Louis.
Pardon?
It's a different line.
It is?
Tell me
Yeah,
that's
what
weird.
that-
Yeah, Louis, that line doesn't run into your house. The fire line is a separate line. Now, when you
Wow.
lose water, if we lose a hydrant, or if we draw water on a hydrant, it bothers your pressure. But the reason it does that is because of the pumps. It's not because it's on the same line.
Is it the same water from the water tanks?
It's the same water. Yes, the water's the same, but the lines are not.
Well, yeah. Well, other than, yeah, there's no way you're gonna be able to tell if seems like if there was any infiltration from the ground into your domestic water, that would be an issue. I mean, they're pressurized, so, they'd be losing water. So I can't see where ground infiltration would bother, unless you got lead piping that the water's feeding you water to your home.
One of the things that I'd like to see us do anyway, right off quick, is do the schools. I know there's been a big thing about doing schools, but I don't think our schools have been done.
Yeah, I know there's a statewide effort.
It's a
right
big
now to do
effort,
that.
and I don't know that state may provide monies to do that with. I don't know that, but
Yep.
I think that we should do the
Well,
schools.
We get a sampling from the schools.
Yeah,
Well, so speaking of schools, we have a couple of comments in the chat from Susan D'Alessandro, and I just want to address them. They've been in there for a few minutes now. She asks, how does water get to my property? There's a long way between from the water company to my house. Also, not sure if how I get my water is different or is the same from the high school.
Yeah,
She's
Susan,
right there on State Street.
yeah, and that kind of speaks to what we were talking about. It could be water source, everything between the water source and the home, or the home itself. And I think doing testing like this, especially with information from Maine Water on how the pipes flow through town and where they basically break off, where they've done their upgrades and whatnot, will give us an idea of basically what you're asking right now. So to Brittany's suggestion, I think we should invite them and also have all that information prepared ahead of time.
You also want.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I also want to make sure that whoever you
I'll
have,
speak a little louder. so-
okay, well, I'm just saying, if you are gonna test water and send it away for analysis, you need to do it uniformly.
Absolutely.
Somebody specifically that knows what they're doing needs to take the water sample so that it can be equally done across. This can't be something you give a test kit to somebody in their home, they do it or whatever. This has to be done by somebody or a group of people who know what they're doing, so that each sample is done the same, so that they know that they get uniformity without contamination.
Any other thoughts on this? So I guess next I'll ask Maine Water to come with that information and can present to us here, and we can ask whatever questions we have. All right. That moves us to the attracting younger populations. Peter, I also sent a survey to be printed out. Did you see that? I sent it after the initial one. There's a draft
No.
survey that,
I did.
okay, well, I'll send it out to everyone to review. There's a draft survey that Brittany put together for us to look at, speaking to last meeting of basically people between 18 and, how old are we going, James?
Would you like me to pull it up on a screen
I don't
share?
know.
18 and 40, I guess 40 is young. Huh?
Do you want me to find it, pull it up on a screen share?
It's fine.
No, I'll send it out to everyone, an email, and it'll be posted as well online. So it gives us some time to look at it, so we're not just sitting here reading anyway. Please offer any suggestions or input on that so that we can review it for the next meeting.
And who's the survey going to be actually targeted toward?
Yeah, and that's one of my questions when I'm putting this together, because we talked about younger people in general, sending it to other communities for younger people to fill out, or are we targeting high schoolers who are leaving our community? So there's a couple different groups that we could be asking. And I think that being too broad could pose some challenges. And I think that doing like a high school exit survey, like we talked about last time, might be the best way forward. But I'm open to suggestions, and I'll just say that the questions that I put in there, I was pulling information from a bunch of different news articles that are out there about rural communities and trying to attract younger population while still supporting an aging population. So what kind of things they've found in their surveys to be important to attract people and keep their population growing. So
What do you think the challenges are of being too broad?
how are we going to reach those audiences? Who are we sending it to, and through what? Yeah, just how are we getting it to them? Or is it just who we know personally in other communities? Like, why won't you move here? So, but that, I mean, that can create some pretty skewed results, in my opinion.
Well, unless it's narrowed down specifically to people who live somewhere else and are considering living here or have lived here, but choose not to. You know, those questions could narrow those things down and make it less broad, in my view.
How do we reach them?
Alumni network,
What network?
alumni network, and there's a lot of younger folks around here who stay in touch with classmates and things. I mean, I've had a number of conversations with people around my age range in school who had this conversation time and time again. So, you know, I'm sure that others could be in contact with them as well.
That would be great.
If there's any local job fairs going on, that'd be a place to put it out.
There it is, coming up at the end of next month.
Yeah,
Yeah, we talked about it last night.
Susan, you had your hand up?
Well, it would be sort of slanted the more I thought about it, but I was thinking that maybe college graduates, since you have a captive audience of the kids that are leaving high school, you could also maybe approach college students, but it would be, a limited audience. What about the people that are not college students, So it could get kind of messy, but it would just be a way that would be easy to have contact, to know who those people are and how to contact them. But it just seems like by just having, like, say, high school, just about every high school kid for sure wants to leave here. You know what I mean? They don't have like enough experience to really know the kind of information I think you would want to hear. They might know why they don't want to, but they don't have a lot of experience yet to really know. It's just what I was thinking.
Oh, Peter,
Mhm.
I think contact between the alumni, I think gives a better idea, of, it would give a better demographic of people who have either migrated away from the area, or if you have, would you consider coming back, and what would be the circumstances that you would consider coming back for? And I also think you would hit your target age range better that way. I'm just concerned that one thing you don't want to do is you don't want old farts like me trying to tell how to attract young people. Young people know
Or
how to
other
attract
things
young
too.
Did anyone else see the Easter
The
Bunny?
Easter Bunny?
people. You need this, he's looking better and better.
Really?
Seriously.
So I guess the question would be, how far back in the alumni network are we going? What year?
Well, if you
If we're doing 18 to 40.
So-
18 to 40, yeah.
So let me just, I guess, ask a clarifying question, because I know we've had the discussion of how to attract people, but how do we keep people here? So there would be two separate, those are actually two separate concepts, right? Yeah, so this is just people that have already left, you want to know what would bring them back. Like, very simply put, I guess, is that what we're going for here?
Well, that's, I think, one component of it. Obviously, there's new people moving to town for their own interests too. I want to make sure it's balanced enough to where it's people who've lived here and try and bring them back, see what would bring them back, but also prospective new populations that would be interested in moving to this kind of place too, versus where they're at and what that difference is. That is a little bit trickier, because how do you reach people that don't even really know of the area other than through someone who already is from here or is sending that out? I think we'll probably get less response in that area. But through people like me and you and others who know many people in our age group outside of town, we could send it to our friends and things like that. But
We could share it, and then when they report what age group they're in, if it's above a certain age, you just don't count those survey results. That's the way you could keep it in the target age range. But the framework that I followed is very similar to the community center survey, where it's like, how interested are you in having this in where you choose to live? And then how satisfied are you with that resource here in Millinocket? To try and get at both things.
any other thoughts on the survey? All right, so I'll send it out to everyone, and definitely share your thoughts by next meeting. Any other suggestions on attracting younger populations in general?
Employment. It's for a certain group that can work from their home, it's one thing, but jobs, no matter how you look at it, everything is tied to development of jobs, whether they be in tech or manufacturing or whatever. That's what's gonna bring people back, and that's what's gonna retain people here. You know, you can offer all the amenities that you want to, or even all the recreational advantages if you want to. But if somebody can't afford because they can't find a job here, one of the things I hear over and over and over is, I would love to move back to Millinocket, but I can't, there's no job for me there. Or they've moved to the area and what they can find for jobs, they can't sustain themselves to be able to move forward with a family or whatever. So it's jobs.
So can I ask Brittany, is that a question that's on there? What kind of job would you need in the Katahdin region in order to bring you back here, around the employment piece?
I think,
Not that we, I mean,
yeah.
just out of curiosity.
I have something specifically around remote work, I think, and having fast, reliable internet, but nothing specifically about,
Kind of job would you be looking for?
Yeah.
Because I mean, you mentioned it yourself, there are no tradespeople
Mhm.
that, you know, there's got to be a way to get those people back here or those jobs available or whatever. It's everything ties. I think if they have a job, then they, yeah, that makes all the difference in the world. The other thing is the housing market. You know, it all ties in together. You know, would you move back to Millinocket? Yeah. Can you find a home? No.
So maybe a constructive suggestion would be to add a part of that survey around what jobs would help to draw those back. Like if we were to have the opportunity to influence new business through our Katahdin or KRDP or whatever the vessel is that's attracting new business. Maybe this new program with SBA office hours in here will help encourage other people to understand how it works to create new business. But we can use information from that question on the survey to look for what we might be able to navigate to.
And this makes me think about the Working Communities Challenge, and if the region is still looking at using that as a way to increase jobs and recreation, is that still happening?
So
If anyone knows.
from my limited experience in that process, jobs and recreation, or however they worded it in that work, is pretty well so expansive that it involves all jobs in this area because they tend to recreation in some way or another.
Mhm.
Everything from being a raft guide to, being a cashier at the Hanford's store caters to recreation in some way. So it's a very, very broad thing. And I may be wrong. I came in and out of that process throughout it. So yeah, it's very broad the way that it was described. I think.
I remember it in the early part of it being like cradle to grave recreation economy, so I'm just curious if anyone knew where that process is and if they're still really focusing on job creation or if it's become something else. I don't know.
I think I don't remember job creation. I remember
Identification.
Retaining.
youth. Yeah, that was kind of maybe the main theme. And again, I came in and out of that because I had 3 different positions throughout the process of that grant application.
Well, absolutely, having a job component, I think, is important, to Mike's point, definitely. Should we look at perhaps salary ranges that they would be anticipating?
I think that would be very useful.
Because, from the people that I've spoken to, I always, invite friends and whoever up here and ask them what their interest is in coming here. And when it comes to jobs and salary ranges, it's hard to find anything in that range that would create the kind of lifestyle that they would want to live. And then also, where would they even spend that money if they had it?
That's the other.
component.
I do have a question there about
Can we do that though? I think it's still.
It has to be open to
It has to be
the
open.
I just got
I think that's a big component. I think they're absolutely right. You know, what if they do find the job and they do have the money, what are they gonna spend it on other than a home? There is very little, that's why well, you know something, that's possibly, and that seems to be getting, these one like a BB seems to be stepping up there with drug enforcement. But the small business, I think, is a big component. If that takes off, and I think that should be promoted a lot.
I have something in there about the importance of having a variety of essential stores, like grocery stores or clothing stores, and then having a variety of non-essential stores, like hobby stores or gift stores, stuff like that. And then a lot of stuff about questions that are surrounding having a more vibrant downtown, live events and community events, stuff like that. So I feel like, I think that part of the survey is pretty strong, but and of course, no one's seen it yet, but I think that what you'll see lacking right now is a lot of stuff about jobs and different salary ranges and that side of attracting people.
The downtown and the events are the things to do. It's huge to, my age range and younger. Those of us with young kids or just even young adults and couples, having a place to go and be social. The younger population is very focused on that. And it is probably one of the most attractive things to that population.
So let's look at the one thing, I mean, in just recent history, what's the one thing that has caused a bigger uptick? I mean, we went from having hundreds of homes to having practically no homes. And one of the big upticks on that was the marathon. People came for the marathon, they saw the community, they took a look at the ground, and they started buying up homes. People from outside the community started buying homes in the area. And I think that helped a great deal. The event created a market again for homes in the area because it would get cheap homes. So I think there's a lesson in there somewhere that I think Pete's right in the fact that an event can cause an uptick in something, whether it be home sales or possibly even businesses eventually seeing, somebody coming and seeing an event situation is thinking this is a good place to start a business. I think they do have an off effect.
Well, it doesn't even need to be, major events like the marathon or, what the new canoe race could likely grow to. But it could be as simple as having regularity to having a few food trucks at Veterans Park on, certain days of the month, or, having regular live music in the downtown, or certain beer fest themed events, many smaller events with regularity, I think, can be more impactful than one annual major event. Obviously, them all happening throughout the year plays in nicely together. But I think, many smaller events is just as impactful.
And I think to Mike's point about buying houses, it'd probably be good to know if they want to rent or buy, and if they want to live in a house or apartment. if
I
they
also
were
have
to.
in there that they would rather have a new build versus something that they could fix up.
Yep.
Yeah. How important is that to them?
But yeah, renting or buying, I think is a big thing to see, what we're lacking right now. Obviously, we're lacking both. But if we have overwhelmingly, people want to rent stuff, then we can address that more specifically.
Speaking to the assessor the other day, she said she gets calls quite often, people looking for land, lot size. They're concerned about, if I can I get a lot, certain size, or whatever, are they available? I think we need to really eventually do a analysis of, with the help of our Todd or whatever, of available spaces and, sizes, so that we can better put on, better get the information out when people inquire.
And they mentioned to us that they're looking at that, that's gonna be a concentration of theirs.
Yeah, well, they
a
did.
focus of this.
But I think the town could do, I think that this is something, the town also has land in different areas that we could look at as well.
What if the town were to approach a budding landowners and purchase some of that to put in development? Maybe we expand our footprint. Thinking out loud,
In which direction?
any direction.
Well, I mean, the idea that, we annexed a great portion of land heading out of town on 157, heading toward South Quinn. That was gonna be supposedly quote unquote developmental homes up there. There's still a lot of land that's available in that direction. The few house lots that were actually developed out there, there's room for a lot more. That's town owned. We expanded going toward East Millinocket and annexed that land, so that East Millinocket basically a butt now. Adobe, we've expanded in that direction. The Rice Farm Road was supposed to eventually be developed all for housing, all along those lots. A lot of that land out there is privately owned, but it was still supposed to be, that was part of the major plan, was to develop those lots. Behind, the new development, there was supposed to be a whole nother developmental section out there. There are areas to look at, to identify and to get an idea, what could, right now we're hunting and pecking at things. We should probably get a more concise idea of availability of space that's municipal.
Yeah, I guess we can just go into that housing discussion since we're already there basically and get back to dog park after. That is also one of the points of the Elks property, is to potentially open that up for development as well. I can reach out to Mitchell Razor and see if he can do a little analysis just to add that in on what kind of expansion is possible on that site, what would it require basically, even if it's just high level. But to the town land portion of it, I was hoping to start, getting an inventory of what that is. I know that last time we spoke about York Street Extension as being one place, and I actually showed Mitchell Razor when he was in town that lot, or that area. And he's aware of some main housing funding that can go towards offsetting a lot of the costs of developing single family homes in a place like that. So he's actually checking in with developers to see if they'd be interested. I believe on the way there, though, I think also off of York Street, or maybe a side street off of it, there's a few lots that had burned a few years ago, and then the town basically acquired it because they couldn't afford the.
I did talk to the assessor, and those still fall under Arcaton, because Arcaton still held the lease. So those lots still fall under Arcaton. Whether Arcaton, well, the ones on York Street Extension and a couple of the ones that burned, I believe may still fall under, Arcaton because of the lease. Now, does Arcaton want them? Most probably not, because they got to pay taxes on. So would there be a situation where they'd be willing to, barter or just simply release to be able to get rid of the tax burden or whatever to the town? Possibly. It wouldn't hurt to do an analysis and inquire.
Is she talking about the I believe she's talking about the 99-year lease clause in your deed. That would be a good place to find out where that stands with Arcata. Because the D'Angelo house and that other house,
Oh, Mr. the Colangelo.
Colangelo's, you know, those would have been under that 990 at least, but I don't know where that thing even stands anymore, because that is town property now.
We have the property in hand,
Right.
but whether the lease supersedes us being able to do anything with it.
I don't know, so you run into that same thing with the lease, with the leases in the new development, where all the deeds in the development say that you can't rent, you can't do this, you can't do that. It's how far, that's a real conversation I and the town should have. Where do you stand on this?
We have had that
You have,
conversation recently. They're not interested in it.
Well, I guess we can get more information from the tax assessor then on what properties the town owns specifically, and talk to Arcata about what properties they might want to collectively put out in an RFP with the town, to see what interest there is out there on, buying lots. And if it comes down to individuals wanting to build something, I think we should do, as opposed to a developer coming in and doing a bunch of things, I think we should look into doing something similar that we're doing with tax acquired properties, which are, you have to build within a year, basically, and have a proposal of what that build will be. That way we'll have an idea of not only what will be built, but how we can assess the value of it and tax it moving forward as well. So if we sell a bunch of lots and it just sits there for another 10 years, then we didn't really accomplish anything. So I think there should be some stipulations.
That could get really interesting. I mean, depending on the process, bidding or, maybe it's who knows? There are programs all over the country where you get, the incentive is, you get $10,000 if you, move or relocate your family. There are, the city will provide the down payment on the house, or, whatever the program may be to attract new citizens. And if we had something exciting to present like that, it might steer some folks this way for that.
And to that point, the land itself has value. So, if someone's looking to build a home, usually you can include the value of that lot as a portion of your down payment towards a home. So if we give someone a piece of land to build a home, that value is something that will tie into their loan, and they might not even owe any down payment because of the value of the land. And we can also work with Maine Housing and other organizations to kind of have a package for each lot, so that the young family or someone who's wanting to move here to start a job at Nautilus or whatever has this ready to go. Basically, here are all the incentives for first-time home buyers. Here's all the incentives for certain income levels or whatever else they would qualify for, as well as the value of the land. All they basically have to do is just sign the thing, get something built, and move here. That'd probably be a good idea to do with maybe in certain lots, individual lots that are otherwise less attractive to a developer.
We've still got the trouble land development down on the Rice Farm Road. That was done years ago. And I think they only sold 3 of those lots.
Yep.
Matt bought 2.
I bought 2, and then there was,
There was one other
yeah,
gentleman.
there's another gentleman that's just further up, yeah.
Where is that?
And that's
Rice
down
Farm.
on the Rice Farm, down near, well, down by Matt's place.
Mhm.
There was 6 or 9 lots there
I think it was 9.
that were set for development by the Preble estate.
And only 3 sold.
I think so, Steve. I only know of 3 houses down there that were built.
Yeah.
Matt built one, he built one next to him, because Sandy Morrison built it. And he owns that one, and then there's one more. Who owns that at the top.
The one more closer to 150. except.
That's the gentleman with the,
Sits way back.
with, all I can think of is the car that had the car show there, that basically is it's a modified motorcycle. He had it down here at the car show a couple years ago. Nice enough though. But I mean, it all trickles down.
This is.
If you have house lots, and if you have room centers, and if people start to get interested and they want to build, now you're talking about bringing tradespeople back into the community because there's a need for carpenters and plumbers and electricians and whatever to bring those jobs back into the community, and maybe those families want to relocate. It all trickles down, but you gotta have a starting point. You know, it's either gonna be jobs that's gonna be the starting point, or it's going to be housing, or a combination of both that's gonna trickle those jobs back down into the community, because like I say, the tradespeople are gonna come, you get more families, and of course, it's gonna be need for more services, those jobs are gonna come, it trickles that way.
You know, when it comes
That's a
to,
good thing,
It is, as long as the trickling is in the front of you and not in the back of you.
but smile while you say it.
anyway, if, we're talking about drawing you know, younger people back, because, you know, you get into like the hospital, with looking for people up there. The older professionals, we know why they don't. It's pretty, you know, they'll tell you right up front, or the wife will tell you right up front, real quick. Because she can have the stores, the arts, you know, those kind of things. But I think the younger generation, I think.
The arts presence is growing.
Right, yes. We appreciate that, but they don't. Well, they do, but, you know, they're talking about. But I think that, you know, I've got a meeting next week with the Chiefs Association. We're doing a presentation to Southern Maine Community College for the firefighter EMS program, to while students that graduate head south. So, Portland, Brunswick, other communities in that area that are trying to hire as well as up this way.
I assume it's the same reason
I
the
think-
police are matriculating down.
I think I know the reasons, but
$20,000.
it's gonna be interesting to hear what the students have to say.
Mhm.
Because they're ready to graduate and looking for jobs or already have jobs. A lot of them have already taken jobs.
And it's not always about the salary for everyone. You know, a lot of people are willing to be paid less if they can live in a community that has other benefits. So, you know, I know that's one thing that's worked well for East Millinocket PD in hiring people, is a lot of the people that work for them like living in this kind of area. Of course, they can have a sign-on bonus anywhere else in the state right now, basically. But they choose to live here because of the kind of life you can have here. So that would be important, an important thing to understand. New graduates from those programs, from police, from all these other trades, you know, contacting schools and different programs that students are graduating there, entering the workforce, you know, what their options are. Maybe that's a part of the survey that we could do, is identify trade schools or other places and ask recent graduates or soon to be graduates what they're looking for, and where they want to move.
Because I mean, we all know, just on the town side, we're gonna be looking for a lot of employees. You know, public works, fire. Wastewater, how do we wastewater, how do we go ahead?
Looking at these, wherever the lots would be on Rice Farm Road, it'd be interesting to know more about that, because speaking with a younger couple who moved here, they live here downtown, but they're looking at the potential to live on Hammond Ridge because they want that type of lot. But these lots over here, yeah, exactly. You know, they don't have that view of the mountain or whatever else is up there, but they do have the space and more of like the wilderness for whoever wants to live there. So that could be a very attractive thing to bring younger people over.
And the river.
Yeah.
I always thought that was gonna be a big selling point, was the fact of it, access or proximity to the river.
You know what killed a lot of people, that like is that utilities.
That was my next question. Is
That
if there
was-
are utilities out there yet?
Well, there's power,
Yeah.
but no
Yeah,
water.
no water, sewer.
The lady that I talked to is building a place under Sherman. Because I told her to contact the federal state and see what they had. And that was one of their big, her big things was
No town water.
the water and the sewer.
Right.
But if you build in Sherman, you're gonna have to do it anyway, so.
Exactly.
And
I
that
just
kind of,
wanted to acknowledge that Susan D'Alessandro added Carhartt's place to the chat a while ago.
That's old news. That's when you were talking about the place with the guy that had the car that was on the Rice Farm Road, and you were trying to think of their name. That was Carhart that lives there.
Thank you. Don't be afraid to
I thought she
unmute and
was
speak
talking
up.
about the Worthing Trail.
I was hoping they were gonna come here.
Yeah, right.
But yeah, that, okay, thank you, Susan. Yeah,
We
that-
do have Carhartt.
Tractors.
Yeah, there's
Actually-
tractor supply.
That's why.
One of the main reasons we can't have a like Rennie's in where the Save-A-Lot was because there's a no compete agreement for Carhartt.
Really?
Because
In
Tractor
that-
Supply has
in that
Carhartt.
shopping center.
Yeah.
You
That's-
can't, it's,
Major reason.
Yeah. in order to keep Tractor Supply in there and sign the lease that they did for time they did, they had to agree to a no competition Carhartt agreement in there, which they do in a lot of places. Nancy DeWitt had taken Rennie's up there to look. Rennie's needed at least somewhere between 15 and 25,000 square feet. And of course, next to Tractor Supply would have been ideal, and they can't do it. Now, but it's within a certain proximity. Doesn't mean you can't put it in the town. It can be a Rennie's and a Tractor Supply in the same community, but they have to be X amount of space apart. They have to, you have to be, like, for instance, a Rennie's can be downtown here, the Carhartt up there, as long as there's a
or on
difference.
the else land.
Or downtown.
Or downtown.
Or we-
If you were gonna do
We
something,
developed a lot. They
You're-
come.
you're not
That's what
going,
I'm saying. yeah.
but you're not
Yeah.
gonna get Rennie's in that lot up there, because Rennie's predominantly like to be in the downtown area.
Which is fine. I'm just saying, you know, with that lot, we should, and that just made me think.
Don't
we
tell the
should-
ladies in Illinois that you can't have Rennie's because you've got tractors.
Yeah.
That would not work well.
We've already told them, this is
Yeah.
full transparency, public
But
recording.
that is the truth.
Wow.
It is absolutely.
I mean, to literally have brought, the sun up here to look around and find a place and then find out couldn't use it.
Well, I'll follow up with tax assessor on town-owned land and see what we can do there. And also with Mitchell Razor to see what kind of developments is feasible on that Elks Land site, if that's something that we end up going with. And hopefully can have an idea of what types of things we'd want to attract. So on the Central Street side of it versus in the, back parts of the lot. To your point of younger people, the couple that's looking for a property that you mentioned, what other properties can we make out of that site that would fit what people are looking for? There's very few larger pieces of land in town that are available right now for residential. Most of the properties in town are very small, have very small yards. So is what people looking for, that might be something to ask, Dan Cochran or others, are people looking for larger pieces of land? Are they looking for smaller
Yes.
pieces? What are the things that are popular right now? And how can we create that with this house land site? And if we do, how successful do they think that will be? Get their input from the realtors.
We have one more problem too, and that is this downtown area and people buying up properties in the downtown area and doing nothing with them.
Mhm.
We're charging or looking to charge an astronomical rent for a very small square footage. You can't, you talk about a vibrant downtown. how can you have a vibrant downtown when you've got people that are tied up the majority of the buildings and have no desire whatsoever to do anything with them? They're just sitting on them. Or in the case of down next to the Scudic restaurant, the gentleman is using that as his, private place to hang out with his buddies when he comes up to snowmobile. I mean,
The little
it's,
restaurant. thing.
yeah, there used to be the Yummy Kitchen. But
And now we have young
now we
baby.
have a Yum Bakery. But I mean, we have X amount of properties along Main Street. And they're all, the vast majority of them are tied up with.
But do we
people who
have any
are-
recourse from the town? I
Well,
mean,
that's
is there
what I-
anything that we can?
That's what I'm writing down right now.
That's
I'm gonna look
what-
it up.
That's what I wonder. I mean, I don't know. But it strikes me that there's gotta be some kind of recourse to do something.
It might
Hold
be,
us
it might be a
hostage.
zoning, it might be a zoning thing. If you have something in the downtown development district, you have to be open a certain amount of hours a week or something like that. There might be something along those
I mean,
lines.
if somebody owns a property, you can't make them sell it. You can't even really make them lease it. Or whatever. But it just strikes me there's at least gotta be a dialogue or a conversation as to why these buildings are vacant for as long as they've been vacant. And, it's one thing to stick a sign in the window for lease, and let it sit there and let the window get so dirty you can't read the sign anymore. Or actually actively pursue leasing the property or renting your property or space downtown.
How did Randy Jackson manage to acquire that building? That's one from the same owner, isn't it? What secret did
assume he did something with anesthesia?
Because I can vouch for the fact that when I lost my store,
Signed the papers.
Go ahead, Sue.
when I lost my store, I went to every single spot on that street and there was no place that I could relocate to other than the Arcatawden building, but it wasn't going to be ready in time. But other than that, and I experienced what Mike was just saying about that little place next to Scudic, the whole thing, it's like next to impossible to locate on Penobscot Avenue.
And Randy's obviously in a different income bracket as some other people, and obviously can afford buying that property and renovating it and not needing an immediate return. I think a lot of people are looking to either rent or need pretty immediate returns. So I think that's why it worked for him. He also has that nonprofit component to it as well.
Right, but I think there have been people that have tried to buy either that building or one of his others, and it just seems like Boardwalk and Park Place, and he's put his hotels on that corner, and that's where it stays. And it probably wouldn't come under this, but I have to wonder, like, is there any thought of like eminent domain? I mean, if these people are holding back the town, I mean, that's our only main street, and people have tried to extend it, as you well know. And so it's like we're a captive audience.
Capitalism at its best.
Go ahead, Louis.
That's capitalism at its best.
I mean, what it would cost the town, I mean, eminent domain is always an option. So is something falling under downtown revitalization. But you run the risk of being tied up in litigation in a court battle for a long time and compounding high fees for attorneys and that. That's why a lot of communities don't use that option. Either way, I mean, it's a very fine line to keep from getting sued or getting involved in a court battle and trying to do it.
Well, I think that's been an argument for the Elks property, so that we can have the space that the town has control over developing. And at a price point that's more attractive to people who might be starting something or looking to develop something. And unfortunately, in turn, that might create the market for someone to actually be able to afford what's downtown. But I know that's more of a waiting game than just taking the property back from them.
Well, again, when the Oaks bought that land originally, that there's approximately 5 lots along that space that are 1 acre or 2 acre lots, I'm sorry, 2 acre lots in size that abut 157. And at the time, the going price for those lots, in order to get the return profit, because they used the lots for Circle K when that was purchased, and the one next door to it when it was originally purchased. And the prices were somewhere in the vicinity of about $225,000 for 2 acres, which was not unheard of at the time. And you have to, there's a fine line that you have to do as far as subdivisions and that, and how many lots you can sell off at a time without being considered a subdivision. If you are a subdivision, what you have to provide for that, whether it be water, sewer, whatever. It gets, I know the Oaks kind of got immersed in it, and it's really what kind of stopped them dead in their tracks, other than the fact that it cost so much to actually build the lots.
Well, it's different for them than it would be for a municipality who doesn't have to adhere to a lot of those development issues. We'd be able to build roads and subdivide lots basically as we please without having to fall under a lot of those permitting and restriction issues.
But it's still this, it's still money.
But as a town, we can seek grant funding and other things like that to build it out. Any other thoughts on the RFP stuff? All right, Louis, you had asked about, speaking about tax acquired properties, and as a council, we had discussed that of making changes to the process of how we award tax acquired properties. Do you want to kind of speak to your thoughts there?
Yes, I do. Not just tax acquired, but disposition of any real estate the town owns. The process we have now, you know, it's counterintuitive to a bid process that we're using, because we have quite a bit of subjectivity leeway in that process, and it makes for bad press or bad feelings for people that expect it to be a bid process. So I tried to suggest a system, and I don't know if you shared it, Steve, or not, but where we would separate the bidding from, you know, the first pass of awarding a request for purchase type of process, where anybody who wants a particular listed lot that we're getting rid of, you know, whether they are an abutting owner, the prior owner, low income, veteran, or whatever class we want to allow to bid on it, that we'd be subjective to about possibly allowing them to have it not being the highest bid, have that as a first pass, just like we do now, you know, advertise it and everything, and have them send in their request for purchase letter, and, you know, explain what they're going to do with the property and what their situation is, and then we could go ahead and decide whether to let the property go like we do now. And if it doesn't, if we decide that we want it to go to a bid process rather than letting any of those requests have the award, then we would put it on like we do now, except that the understanding would be that the highest bidder would get it, period. So that's basically what I tried to say in the narrative that I provided Steve and the town manager.
Yeah, and that's something I can share with everyone. I try not to give everyone a whole book to read before we meet, so I send only a few documents at a time. So we
Yeah.
at least have
I'm not married to what I'm suggesting. You know, we could tweak it any hundreds of ways that the committee feels might work better, but share what I've said in my narrative, and maybe they can come up with a better way of doing it. But the point is to separate a bid process from awarding it to basically a charity case.
Well, I wouldn't summarize all the tax acquired sales as being a charity case, and I would also be concerned if we're just looking at dollar amount, then someone like Bob Benjamin could buy them all up and have them sit for a long time.
Well, that's why you separate the process. You do the first pass on a request for purchase, and whether that's for economic development reason, if you want to make that a class, or you know, some low-income person that has a family, you know, we all know what the past history of awarding these cases are to people that are, you know, that got them for less than the highest bid. So the main point is to separate the process so that if we're going to make a subjective decision, let's make that the first pass. Then if nobody gets it awarded to them for that, whatever, then we could dump it into a purely bidding process.
Any thoughts on that?
Do you mind?
When-
I'm asking you, do you mind? If I.
Oh, yeah, you can use me.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I didn't want to, you know, put you on the spot or anything else. But Louis, this is a prime example. Amber is a prime example. If you remember back, her and her husband, David, bid on a property on.
This is Amber.
Amber, sorry.
I don't think
Bid on a
Louis
prop-
seen you in person yet.
Property on Cottage. And they weren't the highest bidder. However, they were a young family. They were getting themselves situated. Hubby had a job at Hannaford at the time. They had a baby, and we went with them. And like I say, they weren't the highest bidder on the property. However, what we did obviously has bared fruit in the fact that we got a family solidly put into the community. We have a CID person now.
Michael, I don't want to relive all the cases that we've done in the past.
But it's worked.
And I'm not
This
saying that we shouldn't do what you're saying. We've done it in the past. We can continue doing it. We just should separate it from being a bid process. Somebody comes in and you're giving them a bid form. They have an expectation that, you know, it's a bidding. It's not a.
They do not have an expectation. It is on the bid, it's on the proposal when you. put
What's it
money
say?
for a property, that the
Yeah.
town has a right to refuse or any and all bids. So it's not a highest bidder situation on any stretch form. And if they think that that's what it's going to be, then they didn't read what they were signing when they put their bid in.
Yes, and a lot of that happens, and it's bad press and it's bad feelings.
I think what Louis is saying is exactly right. I think we need to do something so that it makes it so that it's more fair. So that the people aren't looking back to, okay, you know, they didn't want me to have that, so they gave it to somebody else. I think there's, I don't know if going by a classification, but I think there's ways that we can make that work a little better. I mean, for every case like Amber, we had cases that were totally the opposite.
Because we went with the highest bidder.
No, because we went with a family, because the lady told us she had 2 kids, and she's going to go to the school system here, turned down the highest bidder, they gave it to her, and come to find out she just moved her drug friends in there.
I can think of a low income case that got a family, you know, that got a property, and there was more than double for a highest bidder. And the highest bidder had some good plans for it, but it was just a matter of, do you choose economic development or the charity of a low income person? And it didn't play well it doesn't come out well for anybody after it's done that, you know, in the same meeting, in the same process. That's why I'm trying to separate it. So that, you know, okay, let's just do a request for purchase. And like a lot of these properties, they're not attractive and they're not going to get requests to be bought.
So what if?
Then we-
Jane had a comment.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, so
Also, Susan has her hand. up.
Yes.
So I just had a question. So that first pass, is that a public process or is it a committee of the town? that-
It's the very same, it's the very same that we do for the bidding. We just do it for a request for purchase versus a bidding.
So you're
And then
just
anybody-
changing the language, basically.
Like a proposal.
Yeah.
A proposal.
Proposal.
Like RFP.
And not a bid.
Right. We would, I think I know where he's getting with that. I think that instead of calling it a bid, call it basically an RFP, or we allow the person to submit a proposal for what they are going to do with it. And the pricing of it wouldn't be competitive, but the story for the first. one.
Yeah, you could make the first pass open to the public for that matter, you know,
I think
because
that
you'd want to consider economic development issues as well there.
I think that's a good point, Louis, and if that might actually allow us to have more teeth if things don't pan out the way they said. Because if it's an RFP, then we can actually enter into an agreement with them that whatever their proposal is, has to be enacted within a certain amount of time. Right now, we only look on the exterior of the property being fixed up within a year and a half or whatever it is. But
Exactly.
But if we can go further and speak to the points that they actually presented in their proposal, and they don't end up doing it, then we can also take the property back for those as well.
Good idea. It's a good way to control what's not happening on the main street.
Yeah, Susan, your hands up?
Yeah, two things, not to muddy the waters, but where do Airbnbs fit into this? Like, is that going to be part of the questions in the first stage? And then the second one is, what if during this process, they tell you we're doing X, and then they end up doing Y? You know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, that second part already has happened, you know, so I think there's always the risk of that.
It could be included in the
Agreement.
or in the statement, even
Well,
or the proposal is received, it could say on whatever messaging is, short-term rental not allowed, or in the contract that we sign with that person after it's awarded, then, it is understood that that is not allowed, that property. In that case, we could probably take action if we were become privy to that information down the road.
Would there be a,
May be wrong, but
Go ahead, Sue.
sorry, I didn't mean to talk over you. Would there be a possibility of putting some kind of clause that if the intended use changes, that some other step has to be taken, or?
Yeah, they have to get approval basically from the town.
Yeah,
That's certainly a possibility. I just wonder how enforceable it'll be over how long of a time period. You know, so if 10 years after they sign the contract and if they decide to do something else with it, do we really have authority at that point? You know, that's something that we have to.
maybe only through zoning.
Yeah.
well, it's like you mentioned, Steve, in their request for proposals, in the award, we could make it conditional that they do what they say, or, they lose the property back to the town. Maybe we'd have to pay for it or whatever, but
Yeah, it's one of the frustrating things about having the kinds of deeds that we have in town is we can't really put anything into the deeds to make any restriction. That's really the only long-term restriction we can have. And that's a big solution that other communities have in terms of affordable housing. They can put in deeds basically that those properties can never sell for more than 80% of the market value as a way to always keep it affordable. We can't do things like that here for the kinds of deeds we have. So we definitely have to look at the long-term enforcement of that.
They're not deeds, they're leases.
Yeah. Mike, did you have a thought on?
No, I worry the fact that the housing market, as small as it is now, I worry that it's just gonna get chewed up by people trying to go ahead and doing more and more with the Airbnbs and the hospitality situation. And that should not be the direction the town is trying to go in. I'm looking for families to move in or young families to be able to get a start. And I am not looking for the highest bidder, because I don't necessarily think sometimes the highest bidder has the best interest of the town at heart.
Do all properties in town, even including ones like the Elks, have those deed restrictions? The Elks as well?
Oh, no, I mean, as far as the air, no,
No, not Airbnb, but having the.
99-year lease?
Yeah,
99-year leases all.
I don't think there's any property that doesn't.
No, there's not a property in town that doesn't have that 99-year.
wow.
More
The
than
chair-
than I.
That was Great Northern.
Hey, the change in process that I'm suggesting is not the change that we've done historically. It's just to try and get the bad optics of the way we've been doing it out of it.
You say bad optics, I say sore losers.
Mike's improving his point, Mike.
Well, I mean, yeah, it's like the proverbial, do we give everybody a participation trophy? No.
Hey, the generation that gave my generation participation trophies, then called us sissies for getting participation trophies. Let's not go there.
Mama's boys, yeah. Anyway, so I look forward, Louis, to seeing your packet. that we haven't yet.
Well, it's pretty much what I've described anyway,
Yeah, I'll send it out, Louis. It's basically just a paragraph or two explaining it all. But yeah, I'll send that out, Louis, and we can talk about that further. I don't see an issue in changing language just so it opens up for more possibilities and stuff, and maybe reframing it.
Yeah, however the committee wants to rework it, as long as we, really don't have the expectation of a bid process when that's not what it is.
Well, it is a bid. It's
It's
still,
exactly what it
it's
is.
still a bid process. We're just reframing it as we're looking at a whole bunch of variables.
It's a bid where you give me the biggest sob story and I might give it to you instead of your neighbor.
I wouldn't characterize that being the case, Louis, but either way, we'll look at your verbiage there. I'll send it out and we'll talk about it at the next meeting.
I have,
All right.
do you want me to forward it?
Yeah, that'd be great. All right, moving on to the dog park discussion. Susan had created this map that I had printed here. And it will be on the website as well. Let's see if it's made it yet. Nope, it'll be on the website soon. There's two different areas, the small dogs, large dogs, and can you explain the training area, Susan? What is the training area?
Yes, lots of people like to do specific training for their dogs. Well, on the first page of the proposal, there's an example of some of the things that might be done by people who train their dogs. We wouldn't be able to afford the equipment right now, but it's an area that can be used for that. There are people in the area who do obedience training. They could hold classes there. It could also be used for dogs that might need to be acclimated, they're, say they've been living isolated and it's sort of overwhelming for them if there's several dogs there. So it can be used for other purposes besides specifically training, but it would be a definite plus to be able to offer that space for training. And I don't know if people realize, for one thing, it's pretty common for most dog parks to be a minimum of an acre in size. And then I don't think people realize either that Millinocket alone has 596 registered dogs. And not to say they'd all use the park, but I mean, that's a lot of dogs. And I've seen times when, like you can even go to Jerry Pond. People are always looking for a place to work with their dog off leash. And so it's not crucial to have that divided off for training, but I think it's very worthwhile to do that.
Any comments on Susan's overall proposal here? Tom?
I think this proposal would take too much away from the kids. There's still a lot of kids that use that park. It's not just basketball. There's a lot of kids that play baseball, you divide it to football. There's a lot of other things going on. I realize that you like to break that out into sections, but I think that's way too big an area. The other issue I have is with the training area. Obedient schools, dog training, those are businesses. If they're gonna run a business and they need to have the facilities to do it, the town shouldn't be doing that. It'd be like us opening a store against another competing business. That should be under their words. But my biggest thing is just, I realize they want a lot, but it's just, how much of that can we take away from the kids? I mean, because that's what that area was originally for. That's what it's needed for, is for a park. Those are my thoughts. Thank you.
Thanks, Tom. Mike?
I agree wholeheartedly with Tom. I can see where, if you look at Susan's map, if you simply draw a line from the proposed training area to the corner of your fence, and that large dog area should be all that's necessary. The rest of it, I don't believe is necessary or is needed. I believe that should stay a playground recreation area for the children of that area, that development. And I agree with Tom. I don't want to get into a town providing. There's always been arguments about getting into the landlord business. I don't want to get into the dog training business either. So I don't think that area is necessary. So I would just go right straight across and say all that training area and right to the fence. The large dog area is all that's necessary.
Thanks, Mike. Any other thoughts?
Yeah, I can see where maybe a tenth of the area that's proposed to be used could be segregated from the larger area, simply for owners that have dogs that don't play well with others, but still want a space to move around and, take them outdoors and get them off a leash, because we do have a leash law in town, and, every pet should have a chance to stretch.
I have a couple of thoughts. I do agree that cutting back on the square footage would be good to still include the room for the kids to play. And, even if it were you know, if we, you know, the back of, actually, that's Amber's lot, you don't mind I say that, probably, right? The adjacent lot on the other side, 137, that's our community initiative director's lot. So, you know, following that diagonal line on the back, if that were to come down to the edge of that other green corner, I think that could be ample amount of room, and still provide some place for the kids to play, as well as, you know, and a smaller area, maybe not for training, but for small dogs. I did have a conversation with our insurance company regarding this. And as long as we don't have you know, any major equipment over there or provide any services over there, it doesn't impact our insurance. You know, so long as, of course, we have this set of rules that looks very suffice. I have yet to receive an answer from our legal team. As long as they're okay with that, I think it looks great. But I wanted to run it through them first. But again, offering services through there or installing any equipment in there, that's what affects the town's insurance policy.
Thanks for looking into that, Peter. Any other thoughts on this?
I think I'm in agreement too, as far as we need to leave more space for the children.
Straight across right there, that large dog area would be sufficient.
I'm wondering, I'm just wondering, Sue, how you're feeling about this, and, you know, if for some reason this space isn't what your committee is looking for, do we need to look at a different space in the community once again? I mean, I don't want to completely shoot down your proposal.
Well, a couple of things. We've actually been working on this for probably about 6 months. And we've been investigating every place that could possibly be a potential. And this was really the best of all of them. In fact, pretty much the only one of all of them for a variety of reasons. And as far as the training area, this is not, you know, for businesses. There are people who are, you know, hobbyists, I guess you would say, that, you know, they're just so into it that they do it, you know, with their own dogs. And, you know, I foresee, you know, offering that to other people that want to do that. You know, it's just like playing football on the field, you know what I mean? It's another use for a public space. And it's not, you know, someone's going to be making money off the town. It's people that are, you know, there's dog lovers like me that, you know, as long as he can sit and stay, I'm happy. But there are a lot of other people who like to take their dogs to the next step. And it would just provide a space for that. It would also provide a buffer between the playground and the lay of the land there. Also, there's very little shade. And the area where the small dogs are, pretty much along that 137 area, is pretty much the only shade on that space. And so by allowing the large dog area to have some of that space gives the opportunity for there to be some shade. And almost any either dog park or even Katahdin Critters, they almost always separate large dogs and small dogs for a variety of reasons. And I'm not sure if people realize the popularity, both for our citizens and also for those visiting, and also for those, you know, it fits a lot of the goals that you talked about for this whole meeting in different ways. And it's, you know, in my opinion, it's truly an amenity for the town. So, I mean, if you're opposed to having the training area, you know, maybe considering letting that green line, I assume you're looking at colored copies.
Yes, it's fine.
Letting the green line continue up and over, like, in other words, encompassing the orange line. And that would extend the playground area that much more. And then leaving the rest of it as it is would allow shade for both dogs and allow it to separate the large dog and small dog.
No.
Thank you, Susan. I don't think there's any disagreement on the value of a dog park. I think we all agree on that. I think it's more how this specific lot would be divided up. You know, based upon what I'm hearing, and also just from the perspective that I originally came in with this, because I had not known that you were working on this project until this came up. So we kind of both met at this point of recognizing that a dog park is needed and had our different ideas about that. So I guess this is kind of trying to form those two into one. So from my side, as I've mentioned before, the contractor that I have been using offered to donate his time to build a dog park for us, the fencing for it. So for me, looking at and then the town would pay the materials. For me, looking at a project this large, I would not feel comfortable asking him to do. So we would obviously have increased costs and probably having to either hire him to do more than he anticipated or hiring someone else to do the rest. And then also the material cost itself. But then also to the point of having enough space for the kids to play ball and other things like that is very important. And not drastically changing a budding neighbor type issues of having dogs right up on their property line, I think is an important thing. Because otherwise the rest of the property is separated by a road or an undeveloped section. So how I see this personally is if the training area can become the small dog park, and then basically that angled line that comes to the property next just meets up with the corner, the top corner of that training area. So basically coming across like this. If it goes like that, keeping this a large dog area, and then the training area becoming the small dog park, I think that would accomplish what we're trying to do here.
There's a glare on your paper, so I can't really see. And keep in mind that I failed geometry, so I'm trying to visualize what you're talking about.
Susan, we're gonna construct a line for you, and I'm gonna hold it closer to the camera.
Thank you. Yay.
This is the line, so I think it would be eliminating this line. And if I came in towards the end of that, but yeah, training area becomes small dogs, large dog has this entire area.
Okay, so the whole right-hand side up to where that black line is still playground.
Correct.
Okay,
If I'm putting it in the right, yes.
And that's still at least, you know, a half acre right there that we're talking for the dogs.
Small dog, small space.
Yeah, and you know, I grew up in the city, in New York City, and they obviously were very limited on space. Their dog parks for small dogs was significantly smaller than this and had a much larger population, obviously. And same thing with the dog park run. It was smaller than what we're looking at and was very used. So I think having this size would certainly carry the demand, you know, that we're talking about and provide enough space. Do you have any thoughts on that, Sue?
Well, I'm obviously at your mercy. So, I mean, we're thankful for whatever we can get, and I appreciate your willingness to, you know, make these suggestions and do what you think is the best for everyone.
Well, thank you, Susan. Another thing to point out also is, I think the fencing that is existing is very low. That might work for the dogs, but or the small dogs, but for the large dogs, that blue line that you have, Sue, of existing fencing, I think it just basically comes up to like chest level or less, right?
I think it's
Yeah.
more.
I thought it was 5 feet, but I'm not positive.
So that stretch would probably have to be raised for the large dogs at least.
I'd have to verify that. I kind of think it would be okay, but as it is, but I'd have to verify that.
This could be a good segue into some research that Amber had done in preparation for this.
Yes,
meeting.
there is a grant coming up May 1st. Let me just pull it up.
I couldn't hear what Peter just asked.
I just made a segue into some research that Amber had done prior to the meeting.
There's a
Oh,
grant called Bark for Your Park coming off May 1st. It's a non-matching grant. It's just an award for winning communities. Each year, they give 25,000 grants dedicated to creating new parks.
Nice.
All you would need is a location, a local civic leader to write an official letter of support, why it would benefit the community, the blueprints, and then letters of community support.
I'm so glad we have you. Oh my gosh. So I'm like, oh, I'm gonna have to write this and do this all night,
yeah.
but this is awesome.
So,
Do you know how much the grant is for?
25,000, and they're selected by voting. So if we could have everyone in the community vote daily for that month, then that's how they select the winners.
Cool, so we could do the whole fence then.
Well,
There's still space.
Go ahead. Mike.
It's called Bark for Your Park through Pet Safe.
Yes, and there's a whole
I got a
list.
comment if you don't mind. Go ahead.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
I'm still kind of concerned in the fact that I think there needs to be a buffer zone. If you have play area here and here, and you have a fence, I can just see little Johnny seeing the dogs that is unleashed, doing this through the fence or something like that, and then little Johnny gets nipped or bit or something else. I think you need to have a buffer zone between your fencing and the play area. So if you were to have a small dog or whatever, or a situation like this, I would say you would want to have like a 10-foot buffer that would run parallel to the fence as a protective area.
yeah, I would make an additional suggestion that maybe instead of taking away space to do that, if it is chain link fence we're looking to purchase for this, they do have the weave
weave
or the there's a mesh kind of material as well that you can, roll out along and attach to the fence, which would, make it impermeable to
Or we could put bushes along it too.
That's what I was thinking.
bushes.
A barrier, yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
It would improve the,
I just don't think we necessarily need to take away from the space. I mean, we're already cutting back and limiting from both sides of it at this point, so.
well, there's already trees anyway there.
Hmm.
Past that fence anyway.
And there's already bushes on my side.
Yeah.
Along the fence.
Sue, you had something?
Well, Peter just pretty much answered it as far as the weaving into the fence, because we had considered that. And, we had also considered about a buffer zone, which was why we had the training area and the small dogs listed where they were, because those areas historically are not used as much. you know, so it would be a separation. And as far as the trees, yes, there are hedges or cedar trees or whatever they're called by Amber's property. But as far as like for shade purposes, the direction of the sun, you know, has to be taken into account. And the area along her side of the park is where almost all of the shade is. There afternoon, there will be some shade given from looking at the picture. I'll call it the north side, the top end of the large dog piece is all wooded. So depending on the angle of the sun, like afternoon would give some shade from those trees. But the bulk of the area that you're talking about does not have any shade. And as far as grants, the one that Amber mentioned is a possibility, but it's also very, very competitive. And we've also looked into what Bangor did as far as grant opportunities. And it included like LL Bean, Bangor Savings Bank, Maine Community Foundation, and a couple of others. Even the Sewell Foundation has an animal welfare arm of their grants. But almost all of those are very, very competitive, just so you know.
I'll also say that when I looked into this in the past, Petco, Chewy, and PetSmart all have park grants as well, which can be looked into.
And the nice thing though about grants is usually you can use the same narrative for all of them. So Sue, if you and Brittany, you want to just send what you are aware of in terms of other grant opportunities to Amber, then I'm sure we can just apply to all of them.
Yeah.
At one time with the same narrative. And this one's coming up very quickly anyway. Do you know how long it takes to get awarded or to know if a community is awarded?
So the voting ends the end of July. And they said that you'll usually hear a decision by like August 15th, no later than August 30th.
So hypothetically, let's say if we purchased fencing and installed this thing and hoped that we were approved for the grant. Is there any reporting that would like exclude
Can you speak up, Peter?
that thing? If we were to go ahead with the proposal and the purchase of the additional
Hey Peter, let
fencing.
me stop you right there. Usually you can't purchase and get reimbursed for grants. You either get the money from the grant to spend, or you basically just don't get it because you already bought it.
I had another question. I don't see an end where the entrance is on the picture, and I wondered if the dog parks I had been to, it had those you know, kind of double gate entries where there's a somewhat of a buffer zone. I just wanted to make sure that was part of the plan as well.
Yes, and that's another question that I had. As far as I know, that the rec department recently put fencing, replaced fencing on one of the fields. And I'm not sure where they got that from or what the cost was or anything, but yes, it would need a double gate situation so that the person that comes to the park would go into that little like enclosure, and then they unleash their dog and then let it into the bigger park. And so actually there would have to be two of those, one for the large dogs and one for the small. And then, you know, most likely we would also like to have some kind of a kiosk that gives the rules, and a kiosk that, or part of that, that gives, you know, the town already has signs dawn to dusk and, you know, all those kind of things, but probably we should, and we might be able to find some volunteers who would be willing to make a kiosk or something, I'm not sure, but, and it would be nice to have a bench if we could, So.
Well, now you're
old-
asking too much. You want them to.
Well, I'm just saying, you know, I'm trying to let you know that this has been very well thought out. And so we're trying to pay attention to every detail. But
Yeah.
yes, we'd be more than thrilled to be able to have the fencing. But as far as pricing it, you know, I don't know if maybe Jody Nelson might be a resource for what it costs them.
I don't understand the need for 2 gates.
Yeah, I
I
have.
mean-
So I'll leave it with you and I will watch.
Louis, sorry, go ahead. Some members just
I-
have to speak as well.
I guess I'm lost. I don't understand the reason for a dedicated space to unleash your dog and then let them into the public area with the dogs.
There's a
Well, you-
section, oh, sorry, go ahead, you can explain. Sue.
You apparently have not been to Katahdin Critters.
No.
When someone comes in with a new dog, they all rush towards where that is. And it allows the person coming in to be able to unleash their dog. And then the other dogs that, you know, are curiosity, they are okay with the dog coming into the park.
Gives them a chance to acclimate before letting them into the public area.
Right,
Or other dogs to escape.
right.
Just for the sake of time, I'd like to wrap this up right at 11, so we're not sitting here for too long. How I would suggest we move forward with this. How I would suggest we move forward for this is honestly just try to come up with a simple rendering of what it would look like and then go for grants to pay for it. That way we're only spending a few $100s on the rendering that could also be used to show the community members what it would become. So when we're canvassing and talking to the people who live in that area, we can show them what it looks like. We can show them what we have in mind, get input from that. And then it could also be used to apply for all the grants. That way we're really not spending a ton of money on this. And while we're applying for the grants would be the time that we get the public involved and aware of what we're doing and get their input. I think it would time-wise match up and it would be the lowest cost to the town.
I agree with that.
Yeah. All right.
So how does the rendering get done?
Oh, we'd have to find someone to
Computers.
do that, yeah.
What?
We'd have to find someone to do that. There's fairly inexpensive people that can be hired, like freelancers. Even someone like Patrick, you know, Santerre can put something like that together very quickly. So we could just ask
Is
around
it-
and see.
So is that something you will do?
I'm suggesting that we do that, and I'm asking for feedback. Not me. I'm not going to do the rendering. No. If that's what
No, but I mean to get the arranged to have the rendering done.
if everyone's in agreement, then the council would have to review that because it would cost some money. Yeah. Tom?
One last quick question. So you've got parking all around the edge of the fence there? Are you talking about just parking on the dirt?
Yes.
Okay.
I'm just throwing this out there as an option. While we're doing some of these other pieces and deciding whether or not to bring a suggestion for a rendering to the council, would it be worthwhile to just get the quote on the fencing ahead of time? And if it becomes unnecessary to have I mean, if it's affordable, we should just be able to move forward with it. You know, instead of, you know, pushing it out that much longer.
Well, I think pushing it out longer also includes getting community input and things like that anyway. Yeah,
We'll talk to neighbors.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I mean, you know, that could be 2 weeks as opposed to 4 months.
Oh, it would not be 2 weeks.
I don't see any problem with getting an estimate on the fence. As far as, that way at least you know what you're looking at. You know, you get an estimate on what the fencing would be. And it gives you a jumping off point. Whether it's you're trying to figure out how to go ahead and how much you need to apply for a grant, or how much you need to do. I don't see any problem with getting just the estimate for the fencing.
So like Jody and Ralph would probably have a good idea of how much that would cost.
Given the changes in what we've seen.
Sure.
You know, just get an idea of what it would cost to have that type of fencing put in. Because it's gonna have to be 6 feet high at least, if not 8.
At least for
Just
the
like-
large dogs.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I've got one dog, for God's sake, that can do a 6-foot fence in a single bound. And without even breaking a sweat, so it should be about 8 feet for the dog.
Yeah, we can see what's standard for dog parks for that. All right, well, we can discuss that further at the next meeting. By then we'll have some estimates and see how we want to move forward with that. I'm assuming it's pricey because of how materials are right now, but we don't know until we ask. We had discussed previously about Peddler's Hill permitting, for just making it an annual thing. And some feedback that we had gotten when this is brought up at the council level was that a lot of people can't really afford the fees for the longer periods of time versus the shorter periods of time. And we really don't profit at all from that. It's very small amounts of money that we get.
We don't get, it costs us money to have Peddler's Hill.
Right.
Yeah.
Because just for the porta potty. So.
So we're not really looking to sustain it
money.
as like a business or anything. So I would suggest we just go with what's the shortest permit?
We have 3-day permit or
Week.
no, it's 3 days or 3 months. Yeah, because we've got people now that buy 3 or 4 permits at a time.
And what's the cost difference between,
$5, $15.
so if we just did $5 for the whole year,
Yeah.
So why do we need to change it?
It would just make it easier if we had a 1-year permit, but after talking to Diana, maybe we don't want. Maybe we just do that. It works. I was trying to make it easier for me, but
Well, I mean, a standard
I'm
$5.
getting to know the people, so now I can just, when I go by, I keep it in my truck. I can just look at the list.
Leave it.
I can pretty much tell you, yeah.
$5 for the year
You good boy.
should be adequate to be able to.
Look,
What
at
it
this.
might do is it might end up
Huh? Look at
allowing
this.
us to attract more vendors. 2 peddlers.
See that?
Louis, can you mute your, got a dog there. Showing him the dog park, Louis?
That's my grandson. He's a 8-month-old Rhodesian Ridgeback.
Very nice. Bring him up when we have a dog park. We're gonna wrap this meeting up though, Louis. So Mike, you wanna finish what you're saying?
Yeah, just have a one standard fee for the year, $5, takes care of it, and it might induce or involve people who want to come in and be able to create more peddlers up on the hill like we used to have.
Keeps the affordability low and makes it just an annual.
Right. I think that would make your job easier and it would probably make Diane's job easier.
Do you not agree with that, Tom?
I think you're giving away. If you do it for $5 for a year, I think you're giving it away. You've got people up there that are making hundreds, thousands of dollars. How about $15 a year?
15 for the year. So
Mike makes all the decisions.
I mean, I'm just,
15 for the year.
I know it's not a money-making thing, Steve, but I just,
Well, it's just thinking
Just
about
my opinion.
the feedback that we got on the council of those who can only afford to really do it once or something like that for the $5. This would obviously allow them to do it throughout the whole year, but I'm trying to keep it affordable for those who may not otherwise.
Can they do that online? Do we have a?
No.
Or what, we need to make it online right now. Yeah, needs to be online. And then they can either print or save the receipt on their phone. Maybe we mail them their official copy of it.
Well, that,
But just like signing.
we
up
had
for-
talked about that, about them being able to go online and request it, and the girls would process it, and just send them their copy, and I'll get my copy. They really need copies of it, because they're supposed to produce, they are supposed to have it posted, so if I drive by, I can see the posting. And then I'll get a copy of it too.
Well, you know, as a temporary thing, if they were able to type in their credit card information, whatever, get the receipt emailed to them, and then they have it, so they can begin the thing, begin
Yeah.
selling their wares, and then the rest of it is mailed or given to you internally.
Because what I
Just
do
like
right now,
car insurance.
I carry those with me. I carry the applications with me in case I run into somebody on the weekend. And I just give them an application. And either they can fill it up and send it in, or they fill it up to the committee. Bring it down. The other big concern I have is, and we talked about this before. I thought it was in the works, but apparently never got in the works. We need a sign up there. We really need a sign. What the stipulations are, what the rules are.
No plowing on other people's property. Let me watch what I make. No.
That's
All right,
where,
so would we agree on 15 a year then?
Whatever the
I don't
price,
think it makes that much.
yeah, whatever the price is set for the year, I mean, whatever you set for a price for the year.
Okay, 15 a year it is. I'll have a recommendation to the council on that.
And then maybe we develop a recommendation on a sign as well. I think we have resources. Practically internally that we
we
can
have somebody to make us.
create a sign.
And Ralph said, get the sign for this year.
Yep.
We can do that quick. Because we're gonna have an ice cream cart this year.
Yeah, I noticed that.
A second one, or
That's where he's gonna be located.
They used one up there.
That's his plan.
Is he removing the meter from down
I don't believe so. He's gonna keep his meter down there.
for fence?
But he's gonna have to, the whole thing up there. He's got to- he's got his own power line. That's all been worked out, but, and the pole is there. He put the pole in. That's all into him, nothing more. Put it down.
Okay.
Well, I'll have a recommendation sent to the council. I'll also do some language on what the sign can include, and I'll send that out to everyone to review and just make sure that everyone's good with that language as well. And then moving on to the community garden, is there any input on the agreements that was sent out or the way that the plots would be organized? These are the plots here, is what we're looking at. It's all been sent out, but, and I'll just read quickly the rental agreement. It's very basic, but it's similar to what you're talking about on Pepper's Hill. As a member of the community garden, they agree to begin planting on or before June 1st to keep the plot planted and maintained throughout the growing season. We can pass it out as well. If I must abandon my plot, I'll notify Pride Canal, Scott, or the town will knock it. I'll keep weeds in my area under control. I understand that if my plot becomes neglected, I'll be given a 2-week notice to clean it up. Won't use fertilizers, insecticides, grow invasive or illegal plants, or certain other kinds of plants, because they're technically not illegal. And will not bring pets into the garden. Basically, this overall agreement of how we maintain what they can and cannot do. And also holding the town harmless for any issues as well.
I thought that looked good.
All right. Well, that's that.
thank you all very much.
Any other comment from the Zoom people?
Nope, thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Have a good one.
You too.